Hitting gaps like this one is one of the harder things to do in disc golf. And if you're anything like me, you kind of go through seasons with disc golf where you are really, really good at one thing, but because you've focused on that, you begin to struggle elsewhere. I've been working on my game a lot throughout the off season, and one of the things that I've forgotten to do is to work on hitting gaps. In fact, lately I've been missing gaps a lot to the right, and it's been really, really frustrating because if you miss a gap on holes like this, what would be a birdie very quickly turns into a bogey or more. So today I'm gonna talk to you guys about some of the things that I've been working on to make sure that gaps like this no longer keep me from getting those birdies. So there's a couple of different things that will help you hit gaps better. And they take a lot of throws, and they're probably gonna be fairly frustrating. You only get better at things as you practice it. Two of the things that I've been really working on, actually a couple of things that we'll probably talk about, one of which is foot placement as you're approaching the gap, and also your aim point. I am someone who strictly believes that you don't need to be looking at the basket if that's where you're throwing. If you're someone who understands your disc, then you find an aim point and you throw it that, and you know what the disc is going to do in relation to that. And that's why you pick that aim point. So for me, I almost always aim down the left side of fairways because I know that my discs are understable. Now, some people might look at that and be like, no, you should always look where you're throwing. If that's what you do, awesome. For me personally, I find an aim point, and that aim point changes depending on the disc that I'm throwing. Okay, so I've been working on my foot placement, I've been working on my aim point, and I've also been working on the extension of my arm, which will actually help me get further down the gap, down the fairway, but more controlled. Because one thing that I have struggled with a lot is powering up and keeping my arm kind of bent like this. I talked about this in a video recently, thinking about bringing your elbow in instead of thinking about reaching back. Because as you reach back, you can see my body kind of turning. But as you get here and you push this, my body's no longer turning. So as you reach back, if you think about pulling in your elbow, it's different than like thinking about pushing the disc away from you. So that's just one thing that I do that works for me. As I go through that reach back, I think of bringing that elbow in, and the further your arm is extended, the less power you need to get through gaps, and so you can throw a little bit slower and be a little bit more accurate. So let's go ahead, throw some discs, give some examples, and see how we end up. So we're out at hole 10 at the Angry Beaver, which has probably I'm 6 feet tall, and this is how big the gap is. So maybe a 6-7 foot gap, fairly close to the basket, or fairly close to the tee pad, which makes it a little bit bigger. And we're gonna see what we can do through this gap, talk about foot placement, aim point, all that kind of stuff. So for me, one thing that I've been struggling with lately is I've been landing with my foot kind of open and almost in a straight line. And in doing so, when I pull through, my release ends up to the right. And I've been going into these woods, and it's been extremely frustrating because I feel like my shot is good. But if you close off your body right here and pull through, it's now actually in a straighter line towards your target, going over here, coming through that power pocket and pushing through. Then if my foot was here, coming through, it now goes over toward the right. So we're gonna throw one shot. We're gonna try and throw these discs the same. We're gonna throw one with my foot open. We're gonna throw it, we're gonna see what happens, okay? Right into the tree on the right side. My foot was open, and that was exactly, this tree right here, y'all, with a foot open, was exactly where I was saying it would go, okay? So now we're gonna try and throw a different disc, and we want to land right about here and pull through, and that should give us a straighter shot towards the basket. Right down the gut, hit the gap perfectly. I want to show this to you from a different angle as well, just so you guys can see it from the front. So the camera, is pretty much in line with the basket, which is where I desire my disc to go, okay? And you would think, or like it's very easy to think, that as I step towards you, the camera, it looks like I'm right in line with you. As I bring through my arm, you can see that it actually ends up over to the right, okay? Now obviously, you can go left and right by early releasing and grip locking and late releasing and all that kind of stuff. But we're talking about if you feel like you're throwing it well and you're just missing your line, this is the type of stuff that's gonna help you. So you might be looking, and a lot of times, again, you think that you're doing this stuff. I thought that I was doing this, but I watched my videos back and I was like, your foot is wide open and you are not stepping over to the left. So as I come through and I step at you, like my foot right here, I feel like I'm stepping at you, but as I pull through, my arm is over to the right. If I'm releasing out in front of me, that's where it's going. But as I close myself off to you, so now my back is almost turned to you and my leg appears as though it's pointing this way. As I pull through right here, where am I pointing? I'm pointing directly over you, which is what I just did, and you guys saw me hit the gap there. The second thing that I mentioned is aim point. Aim point is extremely important, but also knowing your discs and knowing how they fly. For me, I always aim down the left because a lot of the discs that I throw are understable discs. Also, one of my natural release point as I throw is a little bit late, and so I throw a little bit to the right. Now, could I work on fixing that so that I could look directly at the basket and throw it directly at the basket? Yeah, I could, or I could just capitalize on what I already know, change my aim point, and work from there, okay? So my aim point is this tree down here on the left. And when you're throwing understable discs, it's going to push straight, but with some power, it's gonna turn a little bit to the right. This disc is more stable than this disc. I'm gonna throw both of them at this tree and show you guys the different flights that they have. Real quick guys, before we continue, this video isn't sponsored or anything. You guys might not know, but my main job is playing video games for a living. I've been doing that for about 8 or 9 years. I've been sponsored by a company called G Fuel for probably 5 of those years. The whole goal of it is to help gamers, is kind of their main audience, focus while they're playing video games. One of the things I love about video games is the problem solving that is in it. And that's also something that I absolutely love about disc golf, is problem solving a hole. Especially as you get to the point where you need to scramble and you find yourself off to the side or whatever, problem solving is really important. Right now, I have a 30% off code. Normally it's only a 10%, but from the 24th to the 28th, if you guys are interested in trying out G Fuel, head over to gfuel.com, throw in the code MOLT, and you'll get 30% off. Again, just wanted to mention it because I get a 30% off code every 2 months or so. And so if you guys are interested in trying that, you could have it. Normally, it's just 10% off. Thought I'd mention it. Let's get back to the video. So my aim point for this disc is a little bit different than my aim point for this disc. Or if I want to have the same aim point that I feel comfortable with, then I throw this with a little bit more Anheuser or a little bit more extension to get a little more turn out of it, all that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna change my aim point a little bit for this one and aim down there to the left of the basket, not as far left as I would with this since this is more understable. We'll see if we can hit this gap. Nice flight, good stuff. Still finishing down there to the left, so a tough birdie. But we made it through the gap, we made it all the way down, just have a big putt. Now, for this one, gonna aim probably in the same spot now, honestly, based off of how that one flew. And this one should go down to the right and be in a better location. Yeah, so that's gonna go to the right of the center tree. And so knowing your disc and knowing how it flies is how you choose your aim point, but also the release angle that you release it on. So those were pretty close to the same aim point, but you saw the different flights. One of them went down the left side of the gap, one of them went down the right side of the gap. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about for hitting gaps and being more accurate is really being smooth. But a lot of times, being smooth means that you're throwing it a little bit slower. For me, I know whenever I try and power up on something, even if I get a good full extension, my accuracy really struggles. And maybe that's just me personally, but I imagine that applies to a lot of you guys as well. And so if you want to get more distance throwing slower, then it's all about that extension I was talking about and pulling that elbow in. Again, one thing that I like to share on this channel is things that help me personally, thought processes that help me. And a lot of these might not apply to you guys, but a lot of them also might apply to you. And so that's why I share them. For me, thinking about getting my arm back and fully extending was kind of I don't know, I feel like it would create results that I didn't necessarily enjoy, because as I reached back, it would put my elbow in a weird position. I felt like I was like being forceful, almost losing balance and all that kind of stuff. And so I started thinking about this joint right here and how pushing it will extend it. So your elbow right here, if you push that in, like this is still pretty much staying in the same place, my head is still staying in the same place, pushing this in changes that. Now, if I were to think about pulling back, you can see how my posture kind of changes. And I'm not doing that intentionally. It could just be my muscles and how tight I am or any of that kind of stuff. But as I think about pulling this, like if I think about pulling the disc away from myself, my body moves a lot more than if I think about bringing my elbow in. So bringing this elbow in results a lot differently than me thinking about extending my arm. And so that's one thing that I personally think about as I'm throwing, is pulling that elbow in and extending that joint instead of reaching back. And so if you're hitting these gaps and you still need to get distance, but you want to throw slower, then you really need to get that extension so that you can still throw it slower, but still get a nice release, get more power in it without throwing harder, because you can get more power and throw further without throwing harder. And a lot of that is just by being smooth and slow and getting a full extension. So let's try and do that and see if we can continue hitting the gap. So these last couple shots that I've thrown have made it through the gap, but they've ended up on the left side. I would love to end up going through the right gap, because that, as this becomes more stable, allows me to have a better opportunity of getting a birdie putt. So what I'm gonna do to do that is not throw harder, because as you get more spin and as you get more power on your disc, it's going to turn over a little bit more if you throw it flat. Or it will push straight for longer, which is what we want these to do here. I want them to turn over just a little bit more so that I can get down that right side and land flat. So I'm not gonna do that by powering up, because a lot of times when I throw harder, it ends up making me miss my line. So I'm gonna try and get a good extension out of my arm and get down that right gap and hopefully have a look at a birdie. So right now we're bringing all of the different tips into play. We're stepping out here. Okay, we have our aim point, so step, aim point, extension, and we're gonna see if we can get all the way down there to the basket. Right side. Oh! That was gonna be parked. I needed 4 more inches. There it is. Come on. Nice extension. I'm gonna go show you guys where that is. This is, hey, the proof in what I'm doing. So, as you guys can see, that was an absolutely perfect shot on this hole. We brought everything together. We brought the foot placement, we brought our aim point, and then as we realized we were still ending up a little left, we gave ourselves a little bit more extension on the arm without having to forcibly power up. And by doing so, it allowed us to get more spin on the disc, more speed on the disc, which made it turn over, and instead of ending up 20 feet that way, we were about 5 feet right here. All right, so I really hope that this video was helpful for you guys. Obviously, as per usual, comment down below any tips that you guys might have for this kind of stuff. I'm not a professional, I'm an amateur advanced level player, but these are things that personally help me, and that's why I share them. So again, focus on that foot placement, get that good aim point as you know how your discs fly, and then get that reach back so that you can effortlessly get more distance and more of the effect on your disc that you want. Thank you for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I'll see you on the next one.